Hello, welcome to the Learning Pro Live. My name's Cath Ellis. So glad that you're here. Today we're going to talk about a specific topic. I bumped into, or I was looking at Roberta Dombrowski's LinkedIn profile. I'm going to introduce her in a minute. And I saw that she was a UX researcher. I never heard of that term before. So I thought we would introduce her on and talk a little bit about her role. Hiya, Roberta.
Hi, Cath. How's it going?
Great. The last time we saw each other, we were at Devlin.
Yeah.
We're going to brag now. We were at the Venetian.
Yeah.
We were at the Venetian. And well, maybe it wasn't the last time we saw each other, but it was certainly a fond memory of having dinner at Venetian with some other crazy lunatics, Tim Slade and
I like how that's who you say first is the crazy lunatics, Tim Slade. He's gonna love that. Yeah, it was probably a year ago exactly. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's crazy to see how the world has changed.
Yeah.
But I did, when I was looking at people's profiles, I wanted to obviously bring you on. And I was like, what's Roberta doing? And I was like, UX researcher? I've not heard that term before. So I thought this actually leads into a great conversation, because for a long time I've been talking about UX, the missing link and the work that we do as learning designers. I think a lot of the time as a freelancer, Roberta, I get people coming to me and say, we've done our needs analysis and this is what we need.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of the time I go, that's debatable whether you think that's what you need. But I think that there's a massive gap out there on strategy, on needs analysis. So I thought get you on and you can talk a little bit about your role. So we have got a couple of people tuning in right now. Happy to have you here, guys. Please let us know where you're tuning in from and let us know, have you heard of a UX researcher? And if you've got questions for Roberta, pop them into the comments. So, Roberta, tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Well, based in Boston, Massachusetts, I say that my career in learning design actually started 10 years ago. When I was in undergrad, I taught first-year students study skills of how to transition into college environments, and became just really fascinated with the impact that technology could have on education. And immediately after that, I got into instructional design, originally in person, then transitioned into virtual e-learning. And over the years, I found that I really worked for companies that produce learning products and services. And I got offered a role at one point to move over to user experience because the product was a learning product. And I was like, I like solving problems. Why not? And over the years, found myself mixing and dabbling between product management, UX research, UX design. Really, the core of learning and product is solving problems. It's just the type of problems that you solve. Product is usually people, process, practices problems, and L&D is usually learning, talent development problems. So I found my specialty in learning is learning products. So I love doing that. But yeah.
Well, we've got a couple of people just saying, hi there. We're interested in learning a little bit about the difference between a UX researcher to a UX designer. So we'll see, Lyndall, that there's, so if you think about my work, I call myself a learning experience designer. So I'm developing the solution. Where I thought it was really interesting having Roberta in is Roberta does that work beforehand. You explained before, didn't you, Roberta, needs analysis
Yeah. Because I was in L&D, I was working in product as well. I noticed that in product management, the process of identifying the problem, that was traditionally done by a UX researcher. And it's the same thing as a needs analysis. It's basically, if you're a UX researcher, your full-time job is doing needs analysis all the time. And so how I like to describe it as UX research is really working with customers or whoever that is. It could be internal or external, to identify needs, motivations, and behavior. And once you identify that, then you can design a solution, whether that's an instructional design solution, learning design. It could be regular design as well, maybe not related to learning if you're not working on a learning product. But that's really the core, is it's just needs assessment. And then also coming back after the fact too, when you're designing something, how do you get feedback and iterate on it to make sure that the solution is resonating, and seeing that it's successful after you launch it as well. I just saw solutions that were being created for learners with that, like, it would just get dropped the ball, and we're like, why isn't this program successful or engaging? You didn't talk to learners, you talked to the stakeholders, and
That's right.
that's why. So that's really what attracted me to the role in the first place. It's like efficiency and impact and empathy, really. Yeah.
So tell us about your first job when you transitioned into you as a UX researcher from learning pure.
Yeah. I actually consider my first role transitioning into like more research. I was actually in a product management role at Pluralsight. Pluralsight is a technology skills platform. So like data scientists, engineers will use the platform to just gain conceptual understanding of topics, learn coding languages. Um, product strategy is the same thing as like UX research. It's all the same. It's identifying problems. And it was a huge shift. The company I was at before I made the change was just 60 people. So I went from a 60 size organization to 1,600. Like the maturity of the company was completely different. But yeah, I learned a lot because I was at a more mature organization, and they had IPO'd too, and just had so many different services and offerings. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. And so you went over, and did you just find it made sense? The role.
I don't know if my career path has ever made sense. It's very eclectic, but I did find that the same. So, like in product management and UX research, UX design usually uses like a design thinking framework, which is almost identical to the ADDIE model. Like analysis is the same thing as empathy, like the first stage in design thinking. It's identifying what problems. And so I started to map the models a little bit, and basically did those iterative cycles with customers where I'm like, all right, let me identify a problem, I'll talk to them, and just started naturally doing the same like ADDIE process, just in a product or research role. And so it was like familiar, but then like a new environment at the same time. There was some adjustment, definitely. I think with UX research and product, I think a lot about overall business strategy. I am talking to a lot of stakeholders. I think one of the biggest projects I had like 40 people on it, which is insane.
Wow.
Thinking about metrics, KPIs a lot, business cases. That was actually a core reason why I moved over to product and UX research as well, is I wanted more experience on the business side of things, because I saw training being created that wasn't linked to performance. And I thought product management could help me do that as well.
You mentioned something before, and it might have been before we went online, about you would come back into. So it's like you've started the process, and it may have gone it may have gone to another team for a next step, and then you come back in. It seems like you're part of that process all the way through. Whereas I think in a lot of L&D or in a lot of certain learning jobs that I get given, that person who needs analysis isn't particularly involved all the way through and is assessing and is using that data properly. So what might be interesting is if you could maybe talk about a fake project and give people an idea of how you might start your role on that, you know, and where you come back in through that process.
Yeah, that's great. And that was one of the first mental model shifts kind of that I had to make from L&D over to product. My first product role, I was like, yeah, I could do the needs assessment. And then I was like, oh, wait, I have developers and I have to guide them through the rest of the process of creating it. Yeah, I think one of the projects that I worked on at edX, I was head of research over there for 6 months this year, was we were doing like product market fit research for a new product line. And so like really, really blue sky thinking product offering, called Online Campus, and it went to market actually. So I was involved very early stages of like, what is the offering? What is the pricing and packaging? Talking to customers with just like taglines of being like, would you pay for this? And we basically framed the problem, worked with designers to create like the experience. And once we get a beta or pilot test together, then I come back in and we walk through, it's like usability testing, be like, all right, we have the product now, let's usability test with customers, see if they're able to get through the experience. Does it work the way that they expect? When I was there, I worked very closely with product managers and UX designers. So it was very fluid in that way. It like a handoff, as you mentioned, where sometimes like one person does a needs assessment. I've even worked on some product teams where like a product designer will hand off a design, like a product designer will hand off something to a developer, and it's very like linear or waterfall. It's very iterative. Which is how it should be. That's like how creative process is you go back and come back, which is fun.
Is it like sprints that you're doing? Or
Yeah. So that's a great question. The teams I've worked on have followed like agile sprints before, so like very segmented time frame, like 2 weeks. I've worked at some companies that actually don't follow sprints at all, but we basically are, but we're not calling it a sprint. But yeah, so we might have a like research sprint. I call it like insight sprint, where you actually do the problem framing, talking to customers like a week ahead. And then the next week you might do like a design sprint. And so like you go into the design sprint with like, here's the customer problem, here's what they think about it. Let's come up with cool designs or like solutions and get it out to them and usability tests. So it is like very iterative and builds off of each other that way.
Yeah, really, really interesting. It's, I mean, I've certainly had thoughts about building. So I mentioned to you before about disability, you know, about building content specifically for the disability sector, you know, and how basically that would be so much more effective to go down that route of actually going to market straight away and interviewing people to work out exactly what they need. And, you know, I think certainly as a freelance designer, Roberta, you know, it's great because I get to work when I want, how I want, fantastic. But I am really relying on the company that's coming to me to build a solution to have done this work properly. And I know that it's not done properly. You know, last night I did, do you know the company AJ and Smart?
No.
There's a company called AJ and Smart, and they're in Berlin. let's just bring them up, see if I can bring them up. So it was just interesting. It was an ad that was on LinkedIn. I'll share my screen. Oop. Yeah. So they basically, it's bright, isn't it?
It's all good.
So they do these design sprints. They teach you how to do it, and they just and I suppose what I'm trying to do right now is in my mind work out the difference between someone who goes in and does these design sprint workshops to a degree. What's the difference between a UX researcher? I think that some of the things are actually quite similar.
Yeah, absolutely. They're very similar. That's like one of my like long-term career goals is I want to be like a product coach that goes into organizations and does that type of thing.
That was a really interesting video because they said that there is not enough, there is so much demand for problem solving right now, and there's not enough people to do it. So they're having to turn away loads of work. That's why they're training people how to do problem solving, or they might call it strategy, right?
Yeah.
So we've just got a couple of other people jumping in here. Emma saying, hi all, same Lyndall, interested in knowing this also. The different, okay, so we'll go into this in more details. And Amanda is saying, hello, good vibes.
Hey, Amanda.
So we'll go back to Lyndall's, which is talking about the difference between a UX researcher. So give me a minute so I can work it out in my brain. I think the difference is with a UX designer is you work with UX designers, but you're the one that's initially. So what I think is going on here, Lyndall, is Roberta essentially starts the project, and she's got team members like developers who would be UX designers, and some of them would be coders, right? But she's basically looking at that very first discussion about this product. So we've had a conceptual idea, we want to roll out a product, and it will be Roberta that literally just focuses on, or not just, but focuses on going out and interviewing clients, and they might come back. So it's kind of these loops. If you think about the sprint model, they'll come together as a team. They'll go, okay, we've had an idea. We're going to build a prototype quick, and we're going to go out to market, and we're going to use a test, and we're going to come back, and we just keep working on the iterations. Is that right?
Yeah, let me see if I can actually share a screen with you. Let's see if this will work.
That would be great.
We'll see if this will work.
Because I think as most of us as learning designers, we know that there's a gap out there. You know,
awesome.
Needs analysis is done so bad. Oh, here you go.
Okay, can you see my screen? Perfect. All right. So this is actually a model that my manager, when I was the head of research when I was at edX. And so she broke it into 3 different core areas. And this is kind of like the workflow. If you're thinking about a project, you could even imagine a learning design project, not UX. There's context setting. So that's like needs assessment phase. There's prototype. That's when you're designing a solution. And then that's build, or maybe you launched it, you want to evaluate it, measure it. So user research goes all the way across that entire area. She also broke out the function into UX design, which was focused on creating like low fidelity wireframes, mocks, interactions, thinking things like, I love thinking about like task analysis, because that's really like a huge part of UX design is like, what action do I want someone to take on this specific page? How do they go through a flow? And then we actually had a user interface team, which created high fidelity designs and prototypes. So there's definitely like, there's different specialties within UX depending upon the size of the UX team that you have. I've seen some organizations that expect their UX designers to be unicorns and be all 3-in-1. Similar like learning experience designers being unicorns, kind of being all 3-in-1. But yeah, ideally it's like very ebb and flow, and research comes in throughout all of it. So yeah.
And there's some, you can see here, responsibilities of each domain: UX designer discovery, and low fidelity prototypes, QAs working before and after production, UI designer, medium high fidelity prototypes and production ready files. UX research, running and providing guidance on varying levels of research. Yeah,
so one thing that helps is like thinking about mental models of what people might already know. So think of like an e-learning video creation or something like that. A UX researcher would be the person doing the needs assessment, and a UX designer might come in, write the script, put together the wireframes of the videos, maybe start to get into storyline, and the UI designer would come in, really start to put together like the audio recordings, the more high fidelity of the video, the really great images, graphics. And the UX researcher would come in if you, like during the phases of like you had the script, maybe the researcher would come in, test the script with a customer or a learner. So they pop back out, pop back in when you get the actual like audio in there, and test again. And so it's very fluid like that. And it's not just one person or domain.
So in a way, guys, it's like what I've been talking to a lot of people about this crossover, you know. So for example, I do all of my mock-ups in XD, right? So if a client comes to me, and it's been interesting because I've been talking to certainly Emma and Amanda, you know, we're close friends. So we talk about this kind of stuff a lot. And I do mock-ups at a very, see, I'd say that majority of the time I tell a client I'm doing the ADDIE model, but right at the beginning of that design phase, I actually do a visual mock-up. And I test it with them. So straight off the bat, I've got a visual mock-up of how this is going to look. We've done a bit of testing. And it means that I have so much more confidence going into the build. Because I used to work with people who would work as a silo. They'd just do all of the stuff. Then they'd build it. And then the client would say, I hate it, right? I hate the design. And I go, I've never had that. I don't understand. You know, I'd say, I don't know. A client hates it, right? And it's never happened to me because I give them that prototype and I get them to play and test in it at a much earlier stage, right there when you're conceptualizing the idea. You know? So I've been talking about our industries, and I'm going to be bold here. I'm actually, you know, I've actually been saying for a while that if L&D isn't more careful with the way that they produce solutions, it's going to, a lot of stuff is going to be outsourced to, you know, the likes of UX agencies, etc., who I think are doing a better job at and doing that analysis. And I've got a love here, so I think someone agrees, you know. So I think that we have to, for our own sake, understand these different roles that are out there, and where we can put these practices in place, because it just creates a more, it creates a better experience for that end user, you know.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I mean, I'm probably someone who I'm very eclectic in my career background. I've been an instructional designer, researcher, product manager. I actually don't enjoy titles because I don't like being put in a box, but I still am an instructional designer. I do consulting work on the side. When I ran research at edX, I was creating workshops to teach people, like teams, how to do research. I created job aids and templates and everything like that. And the work that I see out of the UX teams and product teams, they're really focused on problem solving. And the way that they do that, they're flexible, they're iterative. And I think that's how like L&D needs to reframe is you're focused on problems too, but most of the time it's people and learning, talent and development problems. And I think it's being open to like adaptive approaches, I think is what is going to really go like a long way in the future.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Thought-provoking.
Yeah.
For those who are tuning in, I don't know if we've still got Amanda and Emma or Lyndall or Chase. So let us know, guys. What's your thoughts on what Roberta's been doing? Are you interested? What do you want to know more about? Have you got any visuals as well that you can show a workflow of some of the tasks that you do, for example, Roberta?
I don't have a workflow with me, but I do have artifacts from research. Let me
that'd be cool.
one. Yeah. Let me pull one up real quick. So let's see. Here we go. So this is customer personas.
Yeah.
So these actually are the core product personas for all of the edX platform when I was there. So this actually came out of, I think it was about 4 or 5 customer research studies. And so with a persona, I spent a lot of time like coming up with a format where when you think about the persona, it's identifying what are the needs, goals, behaviors of the learner that you're creating for. So I did qualitative interviews with these groups and identified like as a MicroMaster learner, that's one of the programs that we offered. What are they looking to do? They want to improve in their career. And one of the things that I try to keep in mind with personas is trying to like eliminate bias as much as possible. And it's so hard just because the image can trigger like a certain emotion or connotation. We actually wrote these with like they, them descriptions instead of gender pronouns, really made the image as small as possible to try and like emphasize that. But when I rolled these out, the purpose of the persona is really just for the teams to gain a baseline understanding of who the customers are that they're building for, because the engineers, the developers, the UX designers, they might not be talking to customers every single day, and they need to have the empathy top of mind. And so creating this, we're able to like hang these and create artifacts so that people could see them like at their desks on their computers when they're designing. But this was one of the cool ones that I worked on, as just because it was so many different studies in one. It's like a lot. Oh, one thing that this group might actually like, if it's in here. Here we go. All right. Over the course of my career, I've probably interviewed hundreds of L&D practitioners from CLO level to L&D practitioners. And I found these themes from organizations and their approaches of learning. And so basically I tried to map this out into like, what is your organizational maturity or L&D maturity? So like unstructured, all the way over to like strategic. So when you're in like a more strategic learning organization, you might be focused on performance. You might be measuring your outcomes. You might have someone doing these needs assessments, different types of modalities and stuff like that. And then like unstructured, it might be an L&D team of one, and they just like need to get content out and like help learners self-study in some way. But I started to notice this like continuum, and I didn't see anybody writing about it anywhere. And I felt really like grateful because I was interviewing so many practitioners to like notice these patterns as well in like corporate learning. That's one of my favorite like artifacts that I've created over the time too.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it makes so much sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and like even talking about like how do you measure success of your programs? If you're more strategic, it's like thinking ahead of what do we need for planning for the organization. If you're more immature on measurement, it might be how many hours of content did somebody watch, or like the Netflix model of learning engagement. And thinking about all those different kind of nuances with organizations. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, let's see if I can find another one. Let's see. I was at Pluralsight for a while. We did learner research. Role IQ is like the product line that I had. It's an assessment product. This is an example of like affinity mapping that we did in Trello. So instead of taking like stickies in a whiteboard and taking quotes, we did it virtually. It's horrible. Don't do it this way. You have Miro and like other tools now. But we actually ended up making a journey map. And this is, I know is like really small, but we broke out like the user journey into these different phases. And then for each phase, we put like, what are their feelings? What actions do they have to take? What opportunities do we have for the product during this phase as well? And then that all got used as ideas for like product enhancements and designs as well. Yeah. Fun stuff.
This is really cool, the work that you've done. And as we've said, there's so many parallels, you know? It is the work that we do.
Yeah. I found that UX, I found, creates more visual artifacts of the needs assessment. I found that L&D needs assessments can be like just Word documents, but in UX, it's like grids, personas, a lot of like interactive sessions to pull the information out of people. Which is a lot of fun. I enjoy it.
Human-centered design.
Yeah, that's what it is, for sure.
Yeah.
We've
got Chase who says, ugh, I need to go. Very cool, you two. No worries at all, Chase. Emma's saying she loving this. Amanda says that matrix is gold. Emma's like, are you able to share these resources? Amanda says, yes, please. I'm keen to see your workflow. So obviously I went back with the comments, but you know, I will ask Roberta if she can share something. If it's not private or anything, we'll see what you can share, Roberta. But you know,
for sure. I am in the middle of like updating my personal portfolio. So I have a goal to add all of this, but during my time at head of research at edX, I created a playbook around UX research and design. And I actually have it in Google spreadsheet with clickable links to share. So that will be up soon. Yeah, that'll be up soon. There's over 30 resources there. So I'm really excited.
Roberta's website I've put down in the description of the video here. So you should just be able to scroll down and click on it. And remind me the URL again, Roberta?
Yeah, it's learnmindfully.co.
Yeah, so you'll be able to check that out. And Roberta will keep adding. I tell you what, Roberta, I think that this is a very interesting topic if you do, you know, if you have been blogging or, you know, you want to do some videos or things like that, I'm sure that you'd have lots of people who'd be interested in finding out a little bit more.
Yeah, that makes me really excited. I actually am like just returning to content creation again. It's been crazy over COVID. But I hope to write a book at some point, but a blog is like a nice first step towards that. So yeah.
That'd be really good. Or you could do a little course. You could sell a course on it.
Yeah, that's the hope. I'm actually doing a lot of mentorship with Tim Slade right now, actually, in terms of like how to package it and stuff like that. So he's been super helpful.
Tim's the man.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm actually really, really sad that I can't see you guys at Devlin. I look forward to it each year. And yeah, it's been such a shame. I mean, I think DDX has been great though. Are you going to DDX? Have you got a ticket?
No, I haven't. It's just I've had some role changes this year too. It's funny because I just got like my professional development bonus for the year, and I have to figure out how to spend it before like the end of December. And I'm like, what conferences are left this year? We'll see.
Yeah. Well, it's been good, the format that you can kind of I haven't done a lot of the videos because I've been busy in the day, and then at night I'm obviously sleeping when the sessions are going live.
Yeah.
So I'm just looking forward to having a weekend off that I can just binge watch, binge watch everything.
Yeah.
But we're going to wrap this up fairly early, guys, because there's a certain event that's happening in 8 minutes I want to go and watch. So it's always good to watch a train wreck. So but what I'd say is, Roberta, this has been fantastic having you on. And as I say to everyone, if you're interested in having another conversation, we can have you come back, and we'll see if we can continue this conversation. But it was certainly a great look into your role. I'm really excited about what you're doing. And I know my mind's like, oh, I'm going to go and do a lot more research myself and find out more about the role. I don't think it's a term that's used as much here in Australia, but I may be wrong. Just maybe I'm not aware of the role. But I appreciate the time that you've given us to come on over and share a little bit about your role.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Where do you want to go? Or you've just started this new role, so
I just joined a company called Osmosis about 3 weeks ago. I'm in a hybrid products UX research role, so really just focused on talking to customers, understanding their needs, and making sure that we're building solutions that meet their needs. Osmosis is a learning platform for healthcare clinicians, so really just an amazing vision, and so excited. Such an amazing team. So if you're in the medical education space, like, give us a look up if you're interested in any of the roles that we have.
And a quick question, how do you go about interviewing people? Do you do them via, obviously, Zoom, or do you do them via surveys?
Yeah, it really varies. When doing UX research, I do everything from like qualitative. Everything right now is like virtual because we can't be in person. But I'll do like Zoom calls, Google Hangouts. I've also done like live usability testing where we walk through like Figma prototypes. Or I will also do like unmoderated as well, where there's like software platforms where you can present things. I do surveys, also like analytics platforms to see things. So like quantitative. So it's really varied. I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to research.
How do you go about, so I've always said data doesn't lie. right? Normally what I say. How do you go about presenting data to UX designers and devs? And they're like, that's bullshit, you know?
Yeah, that's a great question. UX designers are pretty receptive to it because of like it follows the design thinking framework they're used to. Where I've encountered challenges in the past is with data scientists or engineers. The products I've worked on have been machine learning driven. So we have a lot of like, if you think about recommendations like Netflix has, a lot of the learning platforms that I work on have those functionalities, and there's data analysts like behind it powering it. And so what I will end up doing is do pairing methods together. So like I'll talk to customers to understand themes, and then I'll run a survey to see that it's more reflective of like the general audience, just like they do all of those polls about the election to like try to get in a representative sample. I usually will do like presentations. It really depends though, but I'll slice up videos as well because when you hear someone talk about something in their own words, you can't refute that no matter like how data centric you are. It is the empathy that everyone has to like feel something. And those are the nuggets that really get to the team and like reinforces why we're working on something or why something is an issue. So yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really all right. Well, the next time we get you back, we'll maybe dig deep on how you present your findings.
Yeah, I would love to. I've done some sessions on that and have tons of examples to show.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, thank you, my dear. Have a good evening. Are you going to go and watch it?
I am. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
No problem, Roberta. My pleasure. Guys, Roberta's details are below. If you're not hooked up on LinkedIn, connect with Roberta. She's fantastic. If you've got comments or questions, put them in the comments below and we'll source them. And if there's something that I can't answer, I'll flick it over to Roberta. Okay. All right. Take care, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.